What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're basically going to be talking about how to communicate with people whenever you have a problem, whenever you need to just talk to people in general, and what that really looks like for you to really get your thoughts out. So let's go ahead and get into it. Guys, welcome back to another video. I'm going to give you guys 3 steps to basically learning about communication and how I use these basically to help with my own experiences. So let's go ahead and get into it. First step that I want you guys to think about is writing out your thoughts in the morning. What is it that you wake up to? Is it that you wake up to a bunch of noise? Do you wake up to a bunch of peacefulness, to a bunch of quiet? Do you wake up and you're still stressed out? Do you wake up and you're still thinking about all these thoughts that you went to bed with? Do you wake up in a very chaotic mental space? You know, what is it that you think about? And those things that you first wake up, the first thing you think about whenever you roll out of bed, whatever those things are, write them out on a paper, right? Type them up if you need to, but get them out basically. And when you start doing it so many times, you're gonna realize what your trend of thinking is whenever you first wake up. You might realize, first thing I think about is my dog, right? Okay, my dog is laying next to me, so I need to get up, I need to move around, I need to take them outside. You know, maybe your first thought is, okay, I need to get up and I need to go to work, I'm already late. What is the like trend of what you're thinking about, right? That's the first thing I would say, because eventually you're gonna start learning the pattern. You're gonna be like, man, I see that I really focus or really prioritize on this, or like, man, I feel like I'm really depressed about this, or man, I really feel like, you know, now I'm starting to pick up on these different habits that I didn't realize that I had before. And now that you start looking at how often you talk about something or how often you think about something, you'll see where your headspace is actually at. And it helps you be able to know yourself of where like your headspace is, basically. Step 2, I think, is really big. A lot of people talk about it, but I don't think enough people do it, is listen to listen, not to react, right? And the reason I say that is so crucial because a lot of people, whenever you're listening, a lot of people listen just to react to whatever it is that you're talking about. Let's say that I say, I don't like pizza because of tomato sauce, right? Cool, I don't like pizza. But if you're listening and you're trying to debate on why pizza is bad, then you're thinking, okay, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, clearly you haven't tried Domino's pizza. Okay, then if you like Domino's, you haven't tried Papa John's. Like, you're looking for a response of why what I'm saying is invalid, basically. And if you were to really listen to what I was saying, then you would hear the why in what I'm saying. Okay, I don't like pizza because I don't like the sauce. And if I'm gonna have a pizza, then I might as well not have a cheese bread, right? Then like there's a reason behind what I'm saying. But if you're just listening just to hear I don't like pizza, then it's like you're not listening to the real reason why, right? And so whenever people are talking and you're listening, then you're actually going to be able to understand the deeper levels of what it is that they're talking about. Let's say that you're like in a relationship and you guys have to have a serious conversation and you're like, man, we really need to talk about this. And she's like, man, I feel like you don't spend that much time with me. I feel like you give a lot of your time to your work and to your job. Or if she's a wife, you know, you don't give a lot of time to the family. You know, you're always busy, you're on go. For someone that's just listening, you hear like a bunch of nagging. Potentially, you could hear a bunch of nagging, goodness. But if you're listening to actually listening, then what she's saying is, I don't feel like I'm a priority to you, right? And that's because you're listening deeper than just what they're saying. So whenever you actually open up your ears, you're not listening just to be like, oh, well, you know, I'm busy because I have to go to work, and, you know, I'm working because I have to provide for the family, and I have to bring home dinner, and I have to do this and do this. You're listening to react in those cases, but if you're listening to hear what she's actually saying, or what the people are actually talking about, you'll be able to hear the deeper level of what they're saying. One thing that I do whenever I'm talking to people, I try to find things that I can relate to. For me, I like to find things that I can have in common. Because whenever you find the things that you can have in common, that kind of breaks down people's walls, because people don't feel as judged whenever you're talking to them. So if you're like, man, you know, someone's gonna think that I'm tripping about this thing, but then you have a commonality, then you're like, oh, maybe I'm not tripping, and someone else can actually relate to me, so I can actually be able to be open. Like one topic that a lot of people debate on is pineapple good on pizza, right? I personally think it is. But if someone was like, no, I don't really like pineapple on pizza, I'd be like, well, I can see why. Like, if you're not really into sweets like that, then, you know, if you rather just have your pizza be like a meat eater, or you like a supreme, or if you like it plain with just pepperoni, then like I can see why you don't like pineapple, right? Or if you don't like pineapples in general, then I can see why, right? But personally, I do like pineapples. And then, they let down their guard because they're like, oh, like you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. I'm not like, oh, he's tripping. Like, he doesn't like pineapple on his pizza. Like, what? How you not like it, right? You got to find things to have in common, because then whenever you have those type of conversations, then they don't feel like they're being so judged and they're being so like they're about to be attacked, basically. And so whenever you have those type of things, they're like, oh, okay, like I can actually have a conversation with this person because he can be understanding to like me. To help someone know that you're actually listening to them, what I like to do personally is that I will like open myself up. Like, how some people, they'll be talking, they got their arms all folded, or you'll be talking and they're like looking to the side, or they'll be like distracted, basically. They'll be on their phone. For me, I put my phone down, and if we gonna have a conversation, then let's have it. For the most part, whenever I'm talking to someone, I'll sit there and like I might like, if I'm sitting down, like I might like fold my hands together, but like I'm showing like open awareness and open attentiveness to the conversation. So I'm not like looking down, I'm not looking up, I'm not looking around. I'm focused on what they're talking about and trying to understand where they're coming from in the conversation. Because what a lot of people do, they get nervous, right? You start looking at somebody in the eyes for a little bit too long, and they're like, people get nervous. I don't know why. I guess people start thinking that you're judging them, or that you're starting to feel some type of way about what they're saying. But like, if you just sit there and like you pay attention, then you're actually going to be able to absorb more and understand where they're actually coming from. So that's one of the things that I do. If I'm talking to somebody and we're having a good conversation, whether it's serious or not, then like I'm going to show you that I'm being attentive and that I'm actually aware of what we're doing, like what we're talking about. I'm not going to be like sitting here on my phone, scrolling, like, oh, I'm sitting here on Instagram while you're trying to have a conversation with me, because then it'll make you want to shut down, first off. Second off, I'm not really listening. I'm just going to be like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, that's cool, right? And then whenever you do those things, that really shuts you down, or it shuts them down, because they're like, wow, he doesn't really care about what I'm talking about, right? So have open body language and show them that you're actually being attentive to what it is that they're talking about, and watch how much they'll just keep talking. Now, if you don't want to, if you don't want them to keep talking and you genuinely want them to be like, all right, like you've been talking long enough, then, you can kind of give like subtle, like whatever, right? But if it's just like off rip and you're just having a conversation, then relax, take a deep breath, and just kind of open yourself up. Have that type of space where you're like, okay, I'm having a conversation with this person, whether we're talking about something I'm interested in or not. I feel like I still want to give them the space and the floor to be able to express and talk about what they want to talk about. Another thing that I do, this isn't we're still on the second step, by the way. I know this one's a little bit longer because this one's really key. Learn to embrace the silence. A lot of people, they want to go back and forth. They're like, okay, you're done talking, I get to talk. Okay, you're done talking, I get to talk. And it's like, there's no room for silence. There's no room to actually process and to think about what it is that you're talking about. Like I said, if you're talking about something very serious and you're like just going back and forth, then what you're thinking about is what and how can I respond, right? You're thinking about what it is that I can say to try to prove to this person that I'm better, or that I know what I'm talking about. And so whenever I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, we're having a conversation, cool. And I personally will be the person that will like stop, to pause, to process what I want to say. That way I'm not just talking and saying a bunch of words myself, but also that way whenever I have them to, stop talking, that I'm processing what they're saying. So I can actually understand, okay, I'm understanding where you're coming from because of what you're saying. I'm not just listening, that way I can talk right after whenever you're done. Usually when you're in a conversation, depending on who you're talking with or whatever you're talking about, y'all just going back and forth. LeBron's the greatest. No, MJ's the greatest. No, LeBron put up the best points. No, MJ put up the best assists. Whatever that really looks like, but you're going back and forth, right? But whenever you actually have that time to pause, you can process what they're saying and be able to speak what it is that you're thinking about without having to like fumble over your words or say unnecessary things that you don't even feel. Like if you're in a heated argument, what you don't want to do is just be able to keep talking. Allow the space to be able to have a hold on your emotions. That way you're not just speaking and talking out of place. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people do that, and it's kind of irritating because a lot of people don't know when to just stop. Like they can't embrace the silence to just process what they're thinking about. And whenever you stop and think, then you're like, okay, like it's probably not best to say that, because if I say that, it's going to lead to this, or like I'm not going to say it in the best way, you know, whatever that really looks like. And then you're stuck in a predicament that you weren't even supposed to be in if you had just stopped and thought about what you wanted to talk about. Whenever they're done talking, or whenever y'all are both done talking, thank them for being vulnerable with you. A lot of people don't be open. You know, whenever you talk to a lot of people, they're like, man, I really want to be reserved. I really want to be all closed off because I don't want no one to really know who I am or what I'm going through, or that I have this problem about you. Like, I want everything to just be smooth and, you know, nice, right? But whenever someone's actually open and actually vulnerable, then you thank them for it, then they're like, wow, like that conversation went a lot better than I thought it was going to be, you know? And so do that at the end, whenever you're like, cool, we're on the same page, you know, whatever that really looks like. I thank you for being vulnerable with me because I know that it was a tough conversation. I know you've been thinking about it for a while, yada, 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 right? And then it's going to be a good way to end the conversation. Then you can kind of go back to kind of playing around, joking around. If you got to leave, you can leave on a good note, whatever the case is. But thank him for being vulnerable, because a lot of people don't really do that. Therefore, whenever they do end the conversation, then it's like, did we really resolve anything? Or like, you know, should I have been vulnerable with them? Like, are they really the person I can trust to be talking to? All these thoughts come up after, potentially, if the conversation didn't end well. But if you just thank them, then they're like, wow, like I'm glad that I was able to have that type of conversation with them and it actually went well. Finally, on the third step, speak up. A lot of people are so scared to speak. Whenever people are having like negative things to say about you, or whenever people have, you know, things that they want to bring up, a lot of people all of a sudden get scared to speak. Speak up and speak about what you want to speak about. Again, take the time to process what you want to say. Take the time to really understand what you want to talk about, and then continue with what you want to say. Like, one thing that I personally do, I think that really helps me out, because I used to be the type of person where I would speak unnecessarily, right? I would just speak just to speak, just try to make myself believe whatever I was talking about, or try to make them believe whatever I was talking about is what it was. But like, as I learned to just kind of slow down the conversation, then you start to learn like, okay, let me take a second, breathe, process, and then speak. Because whenever you do that, then you actually have more power in your words, because then they're like, wow, you actually thought about what you said. Now that could be good or bad, because depending on what you say, they're like, wow, you really thought about what you said. But if you say it in a good way, then it kind of maintains the conversation. It kind of slows down the conversation to where they got to think. Whenever there's a pause, you're like, okay, you know, I'm talking out of character. Okay, I'm saying things I don't mean. And so whenever you allow that space, then what they do is they also start to think more themselves. Because if you don't speak, then nothing is resolved. Like, one of the things, like I said, that I do, if I'm already in a conversation, then it's kind of different, because I just have to sit there a little bit longer and try to think about what I want to talk about. But let's say that you're in one of those situations where you're like, okay, we're just going to come back to this, right? Like, okay, we're both not in the space to talk about this, but we're going to come back to it. What I would recommend you guys to do is write out whatever it is that you're feeling about the topic, type up whatever it is that you're feeling about the topic, and then out of that, like, just vent, just let it all out, is what I'm saying. So if you just need to let it out, type it up, write it up, whatever. But at the end of all of it, reread it and find the bullet points that you want to talk about, because those are the key things. Okay, cool. So I don't feel like I can be vulnerable with you. I feel like I'm not a priority to you. I think that, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm not attractive to you. I feel like you don't do the chores around the house. You know, if it's your mom or something, I don't know. You know, I feel like you do enough around the house. I don't think you're paying enough bills. I don't know what the case is, right? But eventually, you're going to see like the bullet points, right? And you're going to see exactly what you are actually feeling and what you actually want to talk about. Not all the other stuff with all the emotions and all the extra, but the actual bullet points, so that whenever you revisit the conversation, you're like, okay, this is how I'm feeling and this is why. I feel like this because you don't blank. And then you can actually be able to attack deeper on the root of the conversation without having to go through the whole extra of emotions and words and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, and all those extra things. Just get to the root, have that conversation, and then keep it moving after that. And once you start doing that on a consistent basis, you're gonna start to realize, like, okay, these are very similar bullet points. You know, what is there something that, you know, I'm thinking about? Is this like a traumatic thing? Why does this matter so much to me? And it's going to teach you a lot about yourself whenever you start doing that. But it's also going to teach you how to communicate and actually talk about what you want to talk about instead of having to, you know, dodge around the bullet. So work on writing out a paragraph, everything that you feel. And at the end of that paragraph, make bullet points and start understanding what it is that you genuinely want to talk about. Last tip I'm gonna give, and this is still part of number 3, is that it's connection, not perfection. A lot of people think that they're supposed to have a perfect conversation. Everyone's supposed to be happy and jolly at the end. But what the point of a conversation is that you can connect. If you're talking about sports, you're all of a sudden connecting about sports. It's not gonna be a perfect conversation. You're not looking for, like, oh my gosh, you know, like, you're not looking for a perfect conversation when it comes to that. You're just looking for something to connect on. So whenever you're having one of those conversations in general, look for a connection. The more that you connect with people, the more that you can actually be able to relate with them, the more walls that you can genuinely start to break down. That's how you start building friendships. That's how you can actually start building bonds. And that's how you can start building genuine connections. Like, it's not like you're manipulating the situation to where you're like, okay, I'm just going to like lower their walls so that I can actually attack them or whatever. It's just genuinely like, we can have this conversation and I can understand where you're coming from and you can understand me. We can start building up this friendship. We can start building our relationship. We can start building up our marriage, whatever that really looks like. But when you start actually breaking down those walls, you can start understanding where they're coming from, and you can start to genuinely connect on what the problem actually is. And then you can actually attack it together, which is the key thing of a conversation. So, you know, you just gotta remember, it's not perfection, it's connection. And when you start understanding that, then that's where you're like, okay, let me slow down, let me breathe, and let me try to connect. Let me try to relate. Let me try to understand where you're coming from. It makes it difficult when they don't do that, you know, because not everybody has that skill. But when you're that person that can start implementing that into people's minds, like, okay, I do need to slow down, because whenever I speak, I start speaking out of character. I start speaking about things that I shouldn't. You know, I start bringing up past things that don't even matter in this moment, but, you know, it mattered from before. But now I'm bringing it up because, you know, it's starting to affect me now. Like, okay, cool. Let's talk about what the problem is right now. I see that is a problem, and we can just revisit that. But right now we have topic number 1 at hand. And eventually we can get to number 2 and we can see, you know, whatever that's about. But connecting, that's the main thing. So that's really all I got for y'all. I know I really just gave y'all a lot of gems in 3 steps. But those 3 things being said is learn how to feel in the morning, write out how you feel, right? Whatever that is. Maybe take a vlog if you need to, you know, take a little video if that's gonna help you. Number 2, listen to listen, not to react. Remember, listen to listen, not to react. And number 3 is speak up and basically connect. Learn that the connection part is very key in any conversation. So that's really all I got for y'all. That's gonna wrap up this video, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Gone.